Okay, so we're gonna start doing some algebra today. Okay, and hopefully you'll find that it's really not that hard. Remember, like I said yesterday, you don't have to write everything down. We're gonna use our notes basically to do some examples because I post the notes on Canvas anyway. Okay, so a little bit of vocab. A variable. A variable is a letter that represents a value. It can be a letter. Let's see, no, there we go. Whoa. That's not going well. It can be a letter or a symbol. Okay, so I know I told a number of classes kind of on those first couple days. You've been doing algebra since like kindergarten, first, second grade. Okay, you just didn't realize it. And what I mean by that is you've done things like this. Do you remember doing problems like this back in elementary school? Many of you are shaking your heads, yes. That's algebra. Okay, that truly is algebra. We just replaced this with an X when we get to 7th grade. Same thing. So instead of a box, we have an X. Okay, so we're using variables. Typical variables we'll use are X, Y, and Z, or A, B, and C. There are some letters that we don't use as a variable, like we won't use an L. Can you guess why we don't use an L as a variable? Any guesses? What number does L look like? An L looks like a 1. So we don't want to get numbers, we don't typically use an O as a variable. Why? Looks like a 0, okay? So we wouldn't want to get those mixed up. The next word here is coefficient. Coefficient is the number multiplied by the variable. For example, we can have 3x. The x is the variable, the 3 is a coefficient. Right? And when you see a number and a letter right next to each other, that means you're multiplying. So you're doing 3 times x. Okay, today we're going to deal with a lot of algebraic expressions. And an algebraic expression has one or more terms. We'll learn more about that word. And no equal sign. Okay, so this right here, up at the top here, that's an algebraic equation because it has an equal sign. An expression is going to look like this. 3x plus 7. You can't really solve that yet because I haven't told you what x equals and it doesn't equal anything else, so you can't figure out x. But that's just an expression. Okay, and then we have a constant. A constant is a value that does not change. And the last word is evaluate. We're going to do a lot of evaluating today. And evaluate just means find the answer. Okay, I'm going to go back to constant for a second. In this expression, what's the variable? A variable is a letter, so what's the variable? X. What's the coefficient? Shout it out. 3. The 7 is the constant. Okay, the 7 there is a constant because it doesn't change. Okay, questions on the vocab at all? Those of you at home, any questions for me yet? I haven't really done too much, so we're doing okay. Okay, we're going to keep going then. So here's what you're going to be doing on your homework. It says evaluate each of the following expressions. In order to evaluate an expression, you will substitute a given number for the variable and find the value of the resulting numeric expression. We have to remember order of operations. Order of operations yesterday, what word did we use to remember that? What did we talk about? I feel like we need to do jumping jacks in here or something to wake us up. PEMDAS, right? So we're going to remember to use PEMDAS. Okay, and we're going to evaluate these expressions. Okay, so if I look at this first one, Everybody write that in your notes, write 3x in your notes. Okay, and we're going to evaluate it for x equals 7. All that means is you're taking that number 7 and you're substituting it in for x and figuring out what it equals. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this with the 7 in for x. What do I have to put in between that 3 and the 7? If I just write it like that, it looks like 37. Yeah, I have to put a multiplication sign there because when that 3 is right in front of the x, it means to multiply. And so 3 times 7 is, everyone? 21. There's our answer. So we've evaluated the expression for x equals 7. Questions on that one? Okay, so I want you to try number 2. Evaluate this expression, and everybody at home try it too, and then type your answer into the chat. Put y equals 6, so put 6 in for y, and figure out what it equals. Are you guys agreeing with some of the answers that are coming in the chat? And seeing lots of 32s. Did you get 32? Many people here are nodding yes. So let's double check that. If I substitute 6 in for y, we have 36 minus 2 times 6 divided by 3. We have to do our multiplying first. 2 times 6 is 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and then 36 minus 4 is 32. Make sure we're still following order of operations. Really important we follow those same steps every time. Questions from anybody on those two? Am I going too fast? Will you guys tell me to slow down if I need to? Okay, maybe. Those of you at home, am I going too fast? Yes, no, maybe? Obviously, some of you are walking around. Okay, let's try this one. We have 6 parentheses n plus 2 minus 4 for n equals 5. So I want you guys to write this in your notes. Letter A, just write that one in your notes. And then we're going to substitute, we're going to replace the n. So I'm going to cross out the n and I'm going to put a 5 there. Once we do that, this is exactly what we were doing yesterday. Okay, so once you have that, go ahead and solve it. Those of you at home, type in your answer when you get it. What did we get here? Go ahead, Brittany. 38. So we do what's in the parentheses first. 5 plus 2 is 7. What does it mean when the 6 and the 7 are next to each other, but there's parentheses, Brent? Multiply. Multiply. So 6 times 7 is 42. Minus 4 is 38. Questions there? Okay, letter B. This one's a little bit different just because it has 2 variables. Not that it makes it any harder, but I can tell you the mistakes some 7th graders will make. You'll accidentally put the 3 in for P and the 5 in for R, or get mixed up of where the numbers go. So be really careful when you're doing this problem that you put 3 in for R, and the 5 goes in for each of the letter P's. Okay? So I'm going to rewrite this, and it becomes 9 times 3 plus 3 times 5, with parentheses around that, minus 2 times 5. And then evaluate it. Figure out what that equals. Once you've got it, type your answer in. Those of you at home anyways, type your answer in. Then we need to get 2, 3. I think I can do a little more than that. 32. Same people at home also got 32. Because 9 times 3 is 27. 3 times 5 is 15. So there we're at 42. You see where your mistake was? Yep. And then minus 2 times 5 is 10. 42 minus 10 is 32. So there's our answer. Okay, questions from anybody? Those of you at home, questions at all? Seeing lots of heads nodding no. Okay, last problem. And then I'll give you your homework. Okay, a word problem. Word problems are always the worst, right? Why are word problems so bad? Brooke?
You have to figure out what you need to do.
Right, so it's not so straightforward, right? They don't just tell you, solve it or evaluate it. You actually have to figure it out first. So part of what we're going to learn this year is kind of how to figure out word problems. This one says you are bordering a quilt with blue ribbon. Which expression tells you how much ribbon you will need? Okay, so I'm going to put a 1 above this one and a 2 above this one. Those of you at home, type in 1 or 2. Which one do you think you would need? Those of you here, give me a 1 or a 2. Which expression do you think you would use? And you got to pick one or the other. You can't do both. Would you say expression 1 or expression 2? You think it's pretty even at home right now. I think we have the same amount of people say 2 as 1. What do you guys think here? I mean, you're like, I don't really know. Okay, there's a number of people here who are like, I don't know for sure. Somebody had left my meeting and now they're coming back, so hang on. Okay, so I think we're kind of evenly split. Those of you that said 1 are correct. Can somebody explain why, and maybe some of you just guessed, but does anybody know why it's 1 and not 2? Anybody want to take, Carson, go ahead.
You have to add 72 and
Good. If we don't do that, if I only do 2 times the W, like here, I'm only doubling this side. So I'm only taking those plus the 72. I'm leaving out this side over here. Does that make sense? If I add the W and the 72 first, I put these 2 together and then double it. Now I've got all 4 sides. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so if we know we have to use that expression, if the quilt is 24 inches wide, how much ribbon will you need in all? We would do 2 times W plus 72, but we would put 24 in for W. 24 plus 72 is 96. and then we have to times that by 2. So we would have 192 inches of ribbon that we would need. Questions from anybody? Okay,